Hi, Mike Dolinski here with Taurus. I just recently prepared a webinar on how plants develop their reproductive organisms, how they're pollinated, and how they're fertilized to produce that big crop you want. I use canola as my model, but it basically applies to lentils, peas, chickpeas, any of our blooming crops, including wheat. We're going to take a look at what is actually going on in the field right now. That'll give you some hints on what you're going to see in the webinar. Here we are now. You can see that the rosette has formed, the primary bud cluster is developed, and these actually are what are your flowers, of course. And by now, all the ovules, these anthers, the pollen is developed in those buds. And the big ones are the first ones to actually bloom and be pollinated and usually make the biggest part of your crop. Of course, the next thing you'll see are in fact your flowers are starting to appear. You got secondary bud clusters that are forming down on the nodes as we move further down the plant, and before long you're going to have pods. It is this point in time that a lot of stresses on the plant can cause abortion of individual seeds or pods if you're not pollinated properly. Then finally you have the pollination taking place, and you can see that down in the lower part of the plant the actual pods have formed, and that is the pistil or stigma from the blossom that then expands to form your actual pod with the seeds in it. And it is at this point in time that we need all the nutrients to be moving up into those pods, and we get a shift in terms of the plant's focus on producing the seed. We get less root growth, we get a sort of a slowdown in photosynthesis, and whatever sugars are produced in photosynthesis are moved up into those particular pods, giving you, of course, the seed that makes your crop in the end. Along with that come the additional development of lateral bud clusters from the main stem, and that process of pollination goes on and on and on throughout the growing season for 20-30 days, depending on whether you got moisture and you know, the environmental conditions. The tougher it is on the plant, the faster usually it goes through, so the plant can keep on blooming. So we got to support that plant throughout that whole reproductive period where bloom and pollination takes place. Once we get that cluster bolting up, soon it'll pollinate. The actual blossoms will open. We'll have additional bud clusters developing down lower. We have a few buds that haven't opened. These have the blossoms already formed, these haven't, and this one has already probably been pollinated. And it is through this growing period that we typically can have a lot of stress, heat stress usually here on the prairies. And if you haven't got moisture probes, you have no idea just how much moisture you have, but that really kind of drives how your plant is going to grow. Finally, you have pods that are formed. You can see these two pods are already formed, so pollination has taken place. The seeds are now fertilized and they're going to develop. Each particular seed has to have a pollen tube that grows to it. The rest of these blossoms will eventually form pods, and you will have your bumper crop that you're looking for. This is just a hint of the kind of material you're going to see in the webinar. If this type of material interests you and you're thinking that maybe you could use something on your crops to deal with stresses, to maybe supplement your nutrition package, you've done tissue tests or you haven't done tissue tests, and you think that maybe some NPK, some micros, some biostimulants and some hormones might be of benefit, take a look at the product list on Taurus's website, contact one of their prairie reps, discuss it with your retailers and see whether some of these will be of importance to you in your farm operation. Good luck and see you at the Ag in Motion site coming up here in July. Take care.